I saw, you know, at the beginning of the war, I just sort of had this huge urge to do something. And I'm actually an academic at the moment doing a doctorate. And I just finished my field research. And I thought, you know, I have time. Why don't I go out and help a friend of mine who was out there, Latvian friend of mine. So I sort of went out to the Polish border. And as with, just because I'm a compulsive person, you know, there's always a problem to fix. And so I went out initially for 4 days. It became 2 weeks. That ultimately has ended up being a 10-month journey for me in a country I really didn't know at all well.
And you've organised the buses to bring across how many thousand now? In
so
the past
I've
7
moved.
months?
I've evacuated about 21,000 women and children, mainly away from the war zones in the east and the south. And I keep them in the country. Most people don't want to actually leave the country. I think at the beginning of the war, there were a lot of people who could go to Europe, wanted to go to Europe. But the majority of people actually want to stay in their own
How do you get
country.
them to trust you? The big issue in eastern Ukraine certainly is Russians trying to take Ukrainians back into Russia.
It was a big issue. So I had sort of this problem with trust. So I ended up doing two things. First of all, I did a promotional video with a local mayor saying, you know, the Brits are here, we're here to help. And, you know, he was there. He did an interview. Local government people did interviews. And they interviewed a soldier with his family and said, this is a good thing to do. Second thing I did was I charged. And I charged the equivalent of 10p. Because if you only charge something, they then realised the Russians weren't taking them back to Russia.
We're just looking at pictures now on screen of you actually in Ukraine there.
Yeah.
Were you worried about your safety at all? I mean, you weren't there with any government support or help, were you? No,
and as you see, I wasn't really wearing a flak jacket, and I'm looking pretty overweight because of all the borscht I've been eating. No, I think you sort of, I can't explain it, but you just sort of get in a very focused mindset where you don't, you know, you hear bombs dropping around you, but it sort of becomes like white noise after a while, and you just stay very focused on what you're doing. And as I said, it's amazing to think that by the end of the year, I'd evacuated over 21,000 women and children.
Your inspiration for this, I mean, you're Jewish.
Yeah, so you know, probably your listeners won't know, but 1 out of every 4 Jews that died in the Holocaust were Ukrainian.
Right.
And, you know, my family were from Eastern Europe. They were Lithuanian and Polish. Many of them died during the war. But there were people like Sir Nicholas Winton, people like Oskar Schindler, who stuck their neck out for Jewish people in their time of need. And I felt, you know, now is a time for, as a Jew, we should be reciprocating.
Wow. Dawn?
Brooks, yeah, I just want to ask, I mean, there is a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of Ukraine fatigue going on in the UK at the moment because we're coming up to the anniversary of a year, and obviously we've all got things to worry about in this country as well. So you've been there, you've experienced it, especially with the women and children. What would you say to people watching and listening now about how important Ukraine still is, especially the more vulnerable members of the population?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, you know, unless you're there, you can't quite. I want you to imagine that, you know, particularly in the east and the south, you know, you have no electricity, you have no food. More importantly now, it's been 10 months. Imagining not having any income for 10 months. So it's, you know, scratching a life is very difficult. Now that Putin is bombing infrastructure hugely, there is no heating. And heating, when temperatures go down to sometimes minus 30, is very challenging, which is why I'm sort of itching to get back out there so I can get out and work with the local government people in the south and in the east to have my buses moving people to where they can get food and shelter and safety.
And Brooks, how do you read this overnight offer from Putin for a ceasefire to mark?
I would reciprocate to Putin in the same way he did to the Ukrainians. On Christmas, he bombed the Ukrainians, and on New Year's he bombed the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians should reciprocate back. This guy is a narcissistic sociopath, and I don't think people quite understand, you know, how bad he is.
Have you met any local politicians in Ukraine, or do you operate outside of that position?
I have. I think to do what I do, I need to work with local politicians.
Zelensky, maybe? Or
so no,
not that high.
I haven't. That's above my pay grade. But I have worked with local governors, local mayors, and I've met the local MP in Odessa, who's been very helpful. So, I think working with local government has been critical to my success. Without them pointing me as to where I can help, I think has made a huge difference.
I think what you're doing is an inspiration, honestly, Brooks. I mean, and we just said earlier how there's 27 MPs leaving politics, that number will go up. What's your advice to them? Because you have really found a new role for yourself, having outside politics, which is highly rewarding, maybe more rewarding than being for Braintree.
Yeah, you don't, and the thing is, you don't know until you do. You know, when one door closes, another door opens. And as an MP, hopefully there'll be a number of doors that will open for people. And, you need to think very carefully now, what is going to make you happy? You know, for me, I'm old. I'm 65 this year. So I'm a pensioner, I guess. What is the next chapter in your life? And, for me, I'm doing a degree. So you can go back into academia, you can do charitable work, you can do business. There's nothing wrong with MPs doing business, but don't sort of take these non-exec directorships where people think that they can use you so you can do things. Try and do something that every day is going to make you happy.
Yeah.
Every day that you wake up, you want to get out of bed and think, I'm excited by this day, because you just had on your program a little earlier that the Chelsea manager who died at 58. I'm 64. You just don't know when life is going to end for you. So you've got to make sure, certainly at my time of life, that every day I get up I'm doing something I want to do.